As I watched him roll his suitcase out the door, a part of me wanted to scream the truth about knowing his dirty secret. But I smiled instead, bidding farewell to my husband Derek as he left for his business trip with her. "You have everything? Laptop, chargers, documents?" I asked, trying to mask my inner turmoil with a warm tone. "Yes, dear, all set," Derek replied, his eyes avoiding mine. He hesitated for a moment, as if sensing my underlying tension, but then he leaned in and pecked my cheek. "Don't worry, it's just a standard year-end review meeting." I forced a smile. "Of course. Have a safe trip. I'll keep everything in order here." He nodded and walked to his car. I watched him drive away, my heart sinking with every mile he put between us. Once his car disappeared from view, I let the facade crumble. "You lying, cheating bastard!" I screamed, tears streaming down my face. How could he do this to me? After 7 years of marriage, 3 of which he'd been having an affair with my so-called friend Jenna. The humiliation stung, but I vowed that karma would come for them both. I'd discovered their betrayal 3 months ago, quite by accident. Derek had left his phone unattended, and a text from Jenna Baby popped up with intimate details of their next tryst. My hands had trembled as I read the messages, each word a dagger in my heart. In that moment, I knew our marriage was over, but I couldn't confront him then, not without a plan. So I'd kept up appearances, smiling through the pain as I gathered evidence of their affair. Now, with Derek gone for a week, the stage was set. The private investigator had done his job, providing me with irrefutable proof of their transgressions, and my family, my parents and brother Luke, had rallied around me, vowing to help me expose the truth and make them face the consequences. I wiped my tears and took a deep breath. Time to get to work. I grabbed a box and started packing up Derek's belongings, stripping away every trace of our life together. By the time he returned, our home would be unrecognizable, a fitting metaphor for the end of our marriage. With each item I packed away, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The past was behind me, and the future held possibilities for healing and growth. I would be free of Derek's deception, and he would reap what he had sown. The memories flooded back, each one a cruel reminder of how blissfully ignorant I'd been in the early days of our marriage. "I'm the luckiest man alive," Derek had said, holding me close on our honeymoon in Maui. "You're my soulmate, Marianne. I'll love you forever." What a fool I was to believe those hollow words. Even then, he'd probably been unfaithful, unable to resist the temptation of other women. The thought made me sick. When we returned from Hawaii, he'd been attentive and affectionate, and we started talking about having children. But looking back, I could see the cracks appearing, subtle at first, then gaping chasms of deception. "Working late again?" I'd asked one evening, months after our wedding. "Project deadlines are piling up," he'd lied with a casual shrug. I never suspected a thing, not until that fateful day 3 months ago, when his phone had betrayed him. "Hey, handsome, can't wait to taste you again. You made me so wet last time." The explicit text from Jenna had brought my world crashing down. "You worthless scum," I'd screamed, throwing his phone across the room. Derek had rushed home to find me in hysterics, the truth finally exposed. "It's not what you think," he'd pleaded, trying to spin more lies. "Jenna and I are just friends. Save it, you lying bastard," I'd shrieked. "I know everything. The hotel rooms, the weekends away on business. It's all exposed." He fell to his knees, groveling and begging forgiveness. "I'm so sorry. Please, we can work through this." I'd laughed bitterly through my tears. "There's no coming back from this. Our marriage is over." And so the facade had crumbled. In the days that followed, I alternated between despondent grief and volcanic fury. But as the initial shock faded, a new determination took hold, a resolve to make them pay for their betrayal. That's when I'd hatched my plan and brought my family into the fold. To their credit, they'd rallied around me without question, becoming co-conspirators in my quest for justice. Now, here I was, dismantling the remnants of my old life while Derek was off gallivanting with that harlot. She'd pay too, I vowed silently. I'd make sure both their worlds were destroyed, just as they'd destroyed mine. With my newfound determination, I knew I needed concrete proof of Derek's affair. If I was going to make them face the consequences, there could be no room for doubt or denial. That's when I reached out to Mike Rawlings, a private investigator who had helped a friend gather evidence in her own divorce case. Within a day, Mike had agreed to take on my job. I'll need access to financial records, phone logs, anything that can establish a pattern of behavior, he told me in a hushed voice when we met at a cafe downtown. I nodded, my jaw clenched. Whatever it takes, I want them buried under the weight of their own sins. Mike raised an eyebrow at my intensity but didn't comment further. It'll take some time to really build an airtight case, a month at least. Fine, I said shortly. Just get it done, no matter the cost. As Mike nodded and we parted ways, a sliver of doubt crept into my mind. What if he couldn't find anything definitive? What if Derek had been too careful and covered his tracks? A wave of nausea washed over me, the anxiety almost overwhelming. But then Luke's voice echoed in my mind. Hang in there, sis. We've got your back. My little brother had always been fiercely protective of me. When I'd broken the news to my family, he'd been the first to pledge unwavering support. That son of a bitch will pay for what he's done to you, he'd snarled, punching the palm of his hand. We're with you, no matter what. So I forced the doubts aside and channeled my energy into maintaining an aura of normalcy at home. I laughed and smiled when Derek sent his obligatory daily text updates, as if everything was fine. Hi, honey. How are you holding up? He messaged one evening. Miss you. I'm doing great, I typed back, only a slight tremor in my hands betraying the lie. Just keeping busy with the deep cleaning I've been putting off for ages. You enjoy your trip. And on it went, a hollow pantomime of our shattered life together. But behind the scenes, Mike was hard at work gathering information through surveillance and financial records. Finally, almost 6 weeks after our initial meeting, he knocked on my door holding a large manila envelope. Got everything you need right here, he said, handing it over. Hotel receipts, phone logs, even photos of them together at a restaurant last week. This should put any doubts to rest. I flipped through the documents and images, a cold smile spreading across my face. Excellent work, Mike. The truth is finally exposed. With the concrete proof of their misdeeds now in hand, my plans crystallized. It was time for the grand finale, the climactic act, where betrayal met its bitter reckoning. With the evidence from Mike securely in hand, I knew the stage was set for the final act of my plan. But I also realized I couldn't do it alone. I needed allies, co-conspirators who would stand by me as witnesses and support. At first, I hesitated about bringing my family in deeper. My parents were getting older, and I didn't want to burden them unduly. Luke was still young. Could he handle the emotional intensity of what lay ahead? But as I wrestled with those doubts, my mother seemed to sense my inner turmoil. Marianne, dear, you look exhausted, she said gently, laying a hand on my arm. Let us help you. You shouldn't bear this burden alone. I blinked back tears and took a deep breath. Mom, Dad, I may need to call on both of you soon for something major. They exchanged a glance, and my father nodded firmly. Just say the word, sweetheart. Whatever you need. Luke showed up at my door shortly after, his expression grave and determined. Heard you might be cooking up something big to take that scumbag down, he said without preamble. Count me in. And just like that, the conspiracy was born. Over the next few days, we held clandestine meetings, plotting our moves with military precision. All of them agreed. Derek and Jenna's sins required the most severe consequences. We have to hit them where it hurts most, socially and financially, Luke growled. Make them radioactive in this town. Mom shook her head sadly. I can't believe it's come to this, but they've left us no choice. Exposing their lies is the only path forward. I spread the evidence from Mike across the dining table, recounting the sordid details of the photos, receipts, and phone logs. We'll strip them of every shred of dignity and respectability, I said, a cold finality in my tone. They'll have to leave this town in utter disgrace. As we solidified our approach, the weight of the years of deceit fueled our collective resolve. Their betrayal had breached the most sacred bonds of family and friendship. Now they would reap the karma they deserved. He's due back on Friday? I told them grimly. That's when we'll strike. The plan crystallized, a two-pronged assault that would unravel everything in their lives. First, I would strip our home bare, leaving nothing but echoing despair for Derek's return. Then Luke and I would confront Jenna directly, laying out the undeniable proof of her affair while her own husband looked on. They all nodded solemnly, their expressions a mixture of grim determination and simmering anger. "It's going to be brutal," I warned. "Are you all sure about this?" Mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "We're family, dear, and we always protect our own." With the plan firmly in place and my family united behind me, a strange calm settled over me in the days leading up to Derek's return. It was as if I had passed through the crucible of betrayal and emerged hardened, stripped of the naive idealism that had blinded me for so long. I went about my preparations with cold that clinical efficiency. Every item of Derek's clothing, every framed photo of us together, every scrap of his existence in our home, I packed it all into boxes and hauled it down to the garage. By the time I was done, the house was an empty shell, echoing with the hollow remnants of our shattered life. "It looks like a museum exhibit on post-apocalyptic living," Luke commented dryly as he surveyed the barren rooms. I gave a bitter chuckle. "That's exactly the point. Everything has been destroyed." Mom looked around, a pained expression on her face. "This is so final. Are you sure there's no going back from this, Marianne?" I set my jaw grimly. "After everything he's done? Absolutely not. He chose this path, and now he has to face the consequences." My mother sighed heavily but didn't argue further. We all knew the depth of Derek's betrayal. There was no salvaging anything from the wreckage of our lives. The last step was preparing my final message for him, the ultimate reveal of everything I knew about his sordid affair. I gathered stacks of the evidence Mike had uncovered, photos of Derek and Jenna in intimate embraces, receipts for hotel rooms and business trips taken together, transcripts of their lurid text exchanges. I laid it all out on the kitchen counter, organizing it meticulously. Then I composed a simple letter. "Derek, if you're reading this, then you've already seen what I've done to our house, to every trace of our life together. It's over. But there's more. I know all about your affair with Jenna. Every sordid detail, every lie and betrayal. The proof is on the counter. I've also taken steps to ensure this evidence will be seen by others. Your colleagues at the bank, Jenna's family and friends, everyone. You reap what you sow. Enjoy the karma you've earned, you miserable bastard." I read the note over a few times, the white-hot anger tempered by a strange sense of closure and liberation. This would be the final nail in the coffin of our ruined marriage. I almost pitied him for the cataclysm that was to come. Almost. With the house stripped bare and the letter penned, there was only one thing left: the confrontation with Jenna that would set the final phase of destruction into motion. Luke would be my lieutenant for that, his rage at the betrayal fueling his determination to see it through. "Tomorrow is the day," I told him firmly. "Are you ready?" He nodded, eyes glinting with icy resolve, ready to bring the hammer down hard. They'll regret the day they messed with our family. I believed him completely. Soon, they would face devastation beyond anything they could imagine, and I would get to watch every agonizing moment of it unfold. With Derek gone and Jenna soon to face her reckoning, I set about putting the final touches on my preparations. The house was a blank canvas now, waiting for his return to deliver the ultimate blow. I took the stacks of evidence, photos, receipts, transcripts, and arranged them neatly on the kitchen counter, ensuring they would be the first thing he saw upon entering. Then I placed my letter on top, its words a dagger aimed at his heart. "Dear God, it really does look post-apocalyptic in here," my mother murmured as she surveyed the stripped bare rooms. "Are you sure about this, Marianne?" "Absolutely," I replied flatly. "He's going to walk into a world of devastation, a fitting metaphor for the utter destruction he's brought upon our lives." Mom sighed heavily but didn't argue further. Deep down, she knew the depth of Derek's betrayal made this path inevitable. With the house fully prepped, I went about removing any trace of my own existence as well. Photos of me were taken down, personal items packed away. By the time I was finished, the place was devoid of any sign of human inhabitation, past or present. I turned to Luke with grim finality. "It's done. All that's left is waiting for him to return tomorrow and witness the carnage." Luke nodded tightly. "He'll get what's coming to him soon enough, and then it's Jenna's turn." The thought of confronting her brought a cold smile to my lips. She deserved every bit as much devastation as the lying bastard she'd debased herself with. As the daylight began to fade, casting long shadows across the deserted rooms, A strange calm settled over me. It was the peace that comes from knowing a path has been set in stone, with no turning back. "Are you going to be okay tonight?" Mom asked, eyeing me with concern. "Maybe you should stay with us." I shook my head. "No, I need to be here to greet Derek when he arrives. Don't worry, I can handle it." She sighed again but didn't press the issue. After hugging me tightly, she and Dad left, leaving just Luke and me. My brother looked around the abandoned house, a muscle twitching in his jaw. "I still can't believe he did this to you. The goddamn nerve of that scumbag." "I know," I said softly, "but it's almost over now. We'll make him face the consequences and then move forward." Luke gave a curt nod. "Damn right, and tomorrow we'll bring Jenna's world crashing down too. I can't wait to see the look on her face." As the shadows deepened, we finally said our goodbyes and I was left alone with the hollow silence of the house. I wandered aimlessly through the vacant rooms, my footsteps echoing in the void. Finally, I sank down on the bare floor, leaning my head against the wall. Unbidden tears traced their way down my cheeks as the full weight of everything I'd lost, everything that was about to change, washed over me. But there would be no turning back from this path, no way to undo the devastation. When Derek walked through that door tomorrow, the final act would commence, and there would be no stopping the karma that awaited him. The next morning, I woke with a sense of grim determination. Today was the day everything would come crashing down on Derek and Jenna. They were about to face the full consequences of their betrayal. I showered and dressed methodically, going through the motions as if in a trance. All around me, the house remained an empty vessel, stripped of any hint of the life that had once filled it. Luke arrived right on schedule, his expression set in hard lines. "You ready for this, sis? No turning back now." "I'm ready," I said, my voice devoid of inflection. "Let's go end this once and for all." We arrived at Jenna's modest two-story home shortly before noon. Her husband Rob's car was in the driveway, exactly as we'd hoped. I drew in a steadying breath as Luke and I approached the front door. "You take point," he muttered. "I've got your back." I nodded tightly and rang the bell. After a few moments, Jenna answered, her brow creasing in confusion at the sight of us. "Marianne? Luke, what are you doing here?" "Don't play dumb with us," I spat. "We know everything, Jenna, every filthy detail of your affair with my husband." Her eyes went wide with shock and fear. "What? I don't know what you're talking about." "Save it," Luke snarled. "We've got all the proof. Photos, texts, receipts, everything. You're going to face the consequences right here, right now." Jenna visibly paled, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Before she could gather her wits, Rob appeared behind her in the hallway. "Jenna? What's going on?" "Nothing, honey, just—" But Luke barreled past her, grabbing Rob by the arm. "Come out here, man. You need to see the truth about your lying, cheating wife." Rob's eyes widened in alarm as Luke half-dragged him out to the front step where I stood, stone-faced. "Marianne, what the hell is this about?" Rob demanded. I simply reached into my handbag and pulled out a thick envelope, handing it to him wordlessly. He hesitated, then opened it, his face draining of color as he began flipping through the photos and documents inside. "Oh, God," he whispered hoarsely. It's all here." Jenna was openly crying now, watching in horror as her husband uncovered the undeniable proof of her infidelity, laid out in stark black and white. "Rob, baby, please let me explain." She began through her sobs, but he turned on her with a look of pure revulsion. "Explain what? How you screwed around with Marianne's husband for years behind my back? Jesus Christ, Jenna, how could you?" He sank down onto the front step, his head in his hands. Jenna hovered over him, alternating between desperate pleas and groveling apologies. I stared at her coldly, neither pity nor satisfaction in my gaze. "Do you see now, Jenna, the destruction your lies have wrought?" Her anguished gaze met mine. "Marianne, I'm so sorry. Please, you have to believe me." "Shut up," I said flatly. "There's nothing you can say that matters anymore. You made your choices and now you'll live with them. Same as Derek will." She fell silent, shaking sobs racking her body as I turned away. "Let's go, Luke. We're done here." He nodded mutely and we left Rob crumpled on the step, his and Jenna's lives in ruins behind us. As we climbed into my car, a heavy silence settled between us. Finally, Luke spoke in a strained voice. "You were right. She deserved every ounce of that devastation." They both did, I replied simply, staring at the road ahead. This is the path they chose. Now we move forward. There was still one final piece to unfold, the cataclysm that awaited Derek upon his return. But Jenna and Rob's shattered world would serve as the grim preamble to what was to come. As Luke and I drove away from Jenna's house, the weight of what had just transpired pressed down on me. Their world was shattered, and soon Derek's would follow suit. Justice, cold and brutal, had been served. We arrived back at the vacant house and settled in to wait for Derek's return later that evening. An uneasy silence hung between us until Luke finally spoke up. "Do you think there's any part of you that will feel remorse?" he asked quietly. "Once it's done and the dust settles?" I didn't hesitate. Absolutely not. They made their bed. I'm just the one who ripped the covers off and exposed them. Luke nodded slowly. I know, you're right. They brought this devastation on themselves. The hours ticked by in tense anticipation. I tried to distract myself by cleaning and reorganizing the carefully arranged stacks of evidence on the counter. But eventually, headlights swept across the front windows. Derek was finally home. Luke and I both tensed, readying ourselves for the final confrontation. The front door opened and Derek stepped inside, suitcase in hand. "Honey, I'm back. The review meetings ran a little." His words trailed off as he took in the barren, deserted house. What the hell is going on here? His eyes fell on the neatly arranged stacks of photos and documents on the kitchen counter. Slowly, his gaze lifted to meet mine. "Marianne," he began, his voice trembling, "what have you done? What does it look like?" I asked coldly. "I've stripped away every trace of our life together. It's over." He approached the counter, snatching up the envelope with shaking hands. As he flipped through the damning contents, his face morphed into a mask of horror. "Oh, God! Marianne, please, let me explain." "Save it," I cut him off. "There's nothing you can say. Your lies have been exposed. Your betrayal is out in the open for all to see." Derek crumpled forward onto the counter, his head in his hands as he began to sob. But there was no pity or remorse in me, only a sense of grim satisfaction watching the devastation wash over him. Finally, he lifted his tear-stained face, anguish and pleading written across his features. "Marianne, please, I'm begging you. We can work through this. I'll do anything. You had your chance, and you blew it in the most vile way imaginable." I spat. "Your sins came with consequences, and now you have to live with them." Frantically, he scanned the various documents and photos again, realization dawning on him. "Jenna, oh God, you exposed her too, didn't you?" he whispered, his eyes widening. "Her whole world is destroyed because of me." "Because of both of you," Luke growled from beside me. "You shattered 2 families with your disgusting lies." Derek just shook his head miserably, seemingly broken and defeated. I regarded him with a cold finality. "It's over, Derek. You're going to face the music for your actions, the social and professional ruin you brought on yourself. You and Jenna are finished in this town and everywhere else thanks to social media." He flinched at my words as if struck, but I felt no remorse, no desire to soften the blow. "Pack up what little you have left and get out," I told him flatly. "This chapter of our lives is closed." Wordlessly, he began gathering his scattered belongings as Luke and I watched in silence. Once he'd carried everything out to his car, he turned back to face me. I'm so sorry, Marianne," he whispered. "For everything." I just stared at him, giving no reaction. After a long moment, he turned and walked out the door, his head bowed in utter defeat. As his car pulled away, Luke put a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Are you going to be okay?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think I will be. It's over now. I'm free of him and his web of lies." We stood silently as dusk settled over the empty house. A sense of closure, of finality took hold. The path before me was clear. "Let's go," I told Luke softly. "It's time for me to start over." Without a backward glance, we walked outside and climbed into my car. As we pulled away, I felt a profound sense of liberation and peace. I had prevailed through the crucible of betrayal and emerged on the other side, ready to begin living again. The reckoning was complete. Justice had been served in the most brutal way. Now it was time to heal and rebuild a life free from Derek's dark shadow. The future was mine to shape, and I would seize it with all the resilience and determination I could muster.